I would like to call the Lake Ripley Management District Board of Directors meeting to order. It's October 18th, 2025, and it is 9 o'clock. Roll call. Meg is excused. She has some personal things to do today, and I have not heard from Kim yet, so she may be coming here shortly. Any public comment today? Any public comment today? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to ask the board permission to move our attorneys to the front of the agenda to honor his time and ours also today. So he's here today. Is that okay, board, if we move him to the front of the agenda? Yep. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Laura's made a motion and Steve has seconded to move our attorney up to the front of the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chris, welcome. Come say a few words to us. Chris is our new attorney from Axley. And as you guys know, Adam has moved on in his career, and he did a great job for us on the work that he did. And Chris has picked that up where he left off and helped us with our most current land purchase. So, Chris, I'll let you talk a little bit to our board, and welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me to be here today. My name is Chris Nelson. I'm an attorney at Axley in Madison, and thrilled to be taking over representation of the Lake Ripley Management District. A little bit about myself. My practice is really focused on real estate and representing local governments. So I think I'll be a very good fit for the district and look forward to working with you for many years to come. I took over about a month ago when Adam became the Rock County Court Commissioner, and we had to move pretty fast because, as you know, you were acquiring the property just down the road, and we had quite a bit of work to do to get that transaction completed. But I'm happy to report it is completed. It closed last week, and looking forward to that being a great asset for you going forward. So just excited to get started with representation. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm here and ready to talk.
Well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And just to say, if the way Chris was able to step in and help myself, Steve and Debbie and the rest of us Leanna, the rest of us that we worked on to get this property done, it was huge. I think probably one of the best investments this district will ever make, and I can talk about that later. But thank you for all your help in jumping in and trying to take that over from Adam, because it was quite the negotiation process, to say the least, right? So
it was, but it's done. There's a few things just hanging out there on it. For example, we have to formalize the easement over to get access to the property. But other than that, I think it's pretty much complete. And you've acquired a lot of land here in the last few months, but it seems like it's going to be great additions to the district.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We'll have a few questions, I think, as we move forward. Some things like signage and things that maybe we would. I'm not sure if required is the right word, but the best thing for the district for liability reasons on what the best direction is to do the signage and maybe some other things. So we'll probably be looking for some help there at some point. But other than that, is there anything else that we want to express? Anything else going on that you guys want to ask? I think it's important for Chris to come and meet the board again to show his face so we can put a face to a name and all the great work he's done. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah,
thank you
so
for
much.
having me, and again, I really look forward to this. I think it's going to be great. And
He's excited too.
Sounds like we
Yeah,
do
Excited.
have a
My son
comment from the
Graham,
crowd.
This is his first public meeting, so I'm glad he was able to get on the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Graham. Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much, Chris. And you're free to, if you need to leave, you're free to leave. You can stay if you want to see the rest of the meeting. But thank you for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the September 20th, 2025 board meeting. You don't have a copy of the minutes in front of you. Just take a moment to review.
We had a long meeting last week,
Yeah, we did.
or last month. Good job,
Right.
Georgia. I'll move to approve the minutes from our September 20th meeting.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Steve, second. Any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? Okay, motion passes, thank you. All right, let's move into the treasurer's report, and I know, Steve, you've been super busy, and Debbie's been helping, and Leanna, and everybody else is helping
Yeah.
with transition, so.
Yeah, it's quite
Let
the
us know where we're
task.
at.
It's a lot more than
Yeah.
what meets the eye in these meetings, I'll tell you that for sure. So on the treasurer's report, we didn't have any receipts for September. Our disbursements were $23,837.55, and we have $157,121.41 in our checking account. The next page is where the money went for the month. I don't think there's anything that's kind of out of line at all. We had a very large Stantec bill, but I think that was covered by grant money, I believe. Is that right? This large Stantec bill was covered by grant money?
Yes, some of it.
Yeah, I think most all of that one was. So,
Perfect.
So our total expenditures right there were $23,837.55.
So the Santec, 8,516, that's a grant-funded project, and most of that's a pass-through then?
Yeah, most of that was a pass-through,
Okay.
yes.
So that's why it shows higher than.
Anybody have any questions on that?
Is 599 supposed to be 955 under that Stantec bill?
I think so,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I don't know what 599 is.
Yeah, that's a typo, sorry
Okay.
about that.
No worries.
And then if you want to take a look at the expense worksheet, the one that you were sent is a little bit different than this one. If you look at September top line cost share, we used that $15,000. We had a board approval to use that $15,000 for land acquisition, and that was used between the two purchases of land acquisition, and it wasn't accounted for on the first one that I sent out earlier in this week. So you can see where our budget is. We're at $217,556, and our total year-to-date right now, which includes staff wages, which is just really Liana right now, is $174,257.52. So we're coming close to, for October, we'll have October, November, December expenses, so we'll be coming close right to our budgetary number.
Okay, so you're saying the bottom line number is now reflective of
The bottom
Leanna's
line-
salary?
Of usage, the $174,257
Yep.
is reflective of what Liana will earn throughout the end of the year,
Okay,
and then we have to put all the other
the
expenses.
rest of the staff?
And it also is reflective of the $15,000 that we had in cost share that we allocated to land purchase.
I see that in the cost share, it says there's 9,500 in June and another 15,000 in September. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Because the total's reflecting 15,000, not 24,000.
That's right, that did not add right. So that's correct. So we'll have, I'll amend that and send that out. I don't know why that didn't calculate across.
What line item was that?
Top one.
The top one.
Top one?
Should be, so the total's closer to 180.
184.
Okay,
Mhm.
184, okay.
Right.
No, more than that, 189.
Yeah, so we'll have around, somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 of expenses to incur October, November, December to meet our budget.
Okay.
Thanks for noticing that, Doug.
Well, it looks like we'll be tight, but we'll be okay.
Yeah, well, this budget is always tight.
Yeah?
There's very little fluff in it at all.
Okay. Well, good. Looks like we're getting that transition working now, so thank you, Steve, for that. Any other questions of Steve's report? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the report as read.
I'll make the motion.
Doug's made a motion. Do you have a question?
Or as corrected?
Well, sure, we can do as corrected, yep, sure. Because we had a couple
'Cause-
corrections, yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, yes, I can second.
Okay, so as corrected, Doug's made the motion as corrected, and Georgia has seconded. Any other discussion on Steve's report? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay, thank you, everyone. All right. Anything else, Steve?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to Town of Oakland representative. Laura's here today. Laura Payne, do you have anything for updates?
Just a couple of quick things. I had mentioned last time about the boat launch, so we're moving forward with that. Our engineer Strand has completed the survey, so I anticipate that they will be coming to our December town board meeting to discuss two options for us to review and then vote on. And then they'll complete about 60% of the design that will then, we will apply for grant money to complete the project. So as we get those options, we'll let people comment on that. Public, of course, will be available at our meetings to make public comment if they wish to do so. And then just a quick update with Enbridge. Leanna and I both have spoken with Caroline Rice, the project manager over the DNR. They completed their soil vapor extraction pilot test that they've been working on, and that is now complete. They anticipate that they will have a report of how that went, as well as design in 2026. They continue to have their product extraction on a weekly basis. I don't have the total amounts now. That wasn't available online yet on the DNR website. They're just submitting those once a month. They did have their third quarter groundwater sampling. We didn't have those results last month, but they do now on there. Looks like there's some very, very low levels below the standards in a couple of the wells to the west or near the spill site itself. But there wasn't too much concern from Caroline on that. They'll just continue to be doing their quarterly sampling for quite a while. I think it'll be going on for a long time. And then the last thing is that the site investigation report, which will be very large, it'll be all-encompassing of everything that has happened since they discovered the spill, will be provided to the DNR in the fall, this fall, the next month or so, and that'll be available online too. And I will take a hard look at that and report back with that. And I'll continue to touch base with Caroline with any questions and just for any other updates she feels is necessary.
The big pumper trucks that are over there right now, do we know what they're for, what they're doing?
No, Caroline did not know. I don't know what that is for.
Okay.
We'd have to reach out to, I can reach out to Enbridge next week about that, but I don't know.
I'm assuming it has something to do with the pilot test.
I would assume so.
That would be my assumption.
Yes, the pilot test, they would just be pulling air through it. That's what the soil vapor extraction is that you take the wells, you have a site where you pull air through the system to try to vaporize some of the contamination. So it's probably for that. But I'll find out for sure.
Yep, no, thank you. Any other questions for Laura?
For the boat launch, did you guys submit like plans of what you wanted to have there, or are you just leaving it up to them of what we can do with the space that's available?
Leanna and our road supervisor, Jeff, and I went out to the site. We walked around it. It is very tight in there. We have expressed wanting an ADA compliant spot at the boat launch as well. And we just talked about different items that we would like to see. It will be very limited just because it's a small space. They talked about having a bathroom, but the board felt that just wasn't enough space and it's not something that we can maintain, so that was taken out. What else? Just the type of boat launch we would like? What, anything
Lighting,
specific?
we can try
Lighting,
lighting.
mhm,
Certainly a better
parking.
pier.
Yeah,
The
better
will be
pier.
much improved.
Yes,
It'll be much improved, and the ramp itself will be much improved.
yes,
So
that will all be
you go out
improved.
about maybe 8 or 10 feet, somewhere in there, and it drops off because.
That's what I was going to ask.
Right.
Is there going to be a longer ramp?
That's,
Yes, there's going to be a
That's rough
longer,
for when the lake is low?
yes.
yes.
Especially when you're not supposed to power on to the boat lift or the trailer. It's hard to get it up there.
That was the main motivation
Yep.
to work on the boat launch because of that issue.
Mhm.
So that will all be addressed.
Good, thank you.
Any news on signage at the marina for the wake boat?
Did you talk to the marina? Jeff said he would put them out in the spring prior to boat
Yeah, I
season.
have not, I will though.
Yeah,
Yep.
we will put that out
Yes.
before boat season in 2026.
And he has expressed willingness to do that when I did it last year, but I'll confirm again that he's still okay
Yeah.
with putting that sign up.
So probably in April, we'll go out there
Yeah.
and place those signs.
Yeah, actually, one time, I think me and you were over there, we mentioned it too, but yeah, I'll confirm.
Mhm.
So, yeah, okay, any other questions for Laura? Okay,
Thank you, Laura.
yeah.
Thank
thanks,
you.
Laura.
No, thank you.
We'll move on to the Jefferson County Representative Report. Meg's not here today, but is there anything that anybody knows about?
Nope, she did not have anything
Okay,
for us today.
all right. That being said, we'll move on to Lake Manager Report, correspondence, end of year report, clean boats, clean waters.
I'm actually going to
And/or
let Dwight go first,
Dwight
if
go
that's all
first,
right, and then I'll report on our Clean Boats, Clean Waters.
Okay.
All right, thank you. My name's Dwight Osmond. I'm the water quality technician here at Lake Ripley Management District. And I'm here to talk about what we've done the last few years, and we'll be going over 2022 data, and 2023 data,
One of them's
which
already
we
off.
touched on last year, and also looking over the 2024 data, doing some comparisons, and hopefully drawing some conclusions on what might be some good next steps. So I'm going to talk about water quality sampling, what we collect and what we found. I'm going to talk about flow monitoring and the watershed modeling. So some of this is going to be similar to what those of you who were here last year saw, but I wanted to keep in the educational components so that any of the audience and newer members can understand the science behind what we're doing. Excuse me. So water quality parameters that we measure, we look at total phosphorus. That's the important nutrient in the lake because it stimulates algae growth, so it's what causes the lake to go from clear to green. Looking at suspended solids, those are the small particles that you would be able to see if you looked in the water, either in the lake or in the creek. And then we monitor temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen. We've cut turbidity out mostly because we found out that maintaining that equipment didn't have any value in terms of us analyzing what's going on in the watershed. And conductivity, which is the dissolved substances in the water. So the suspended solids are the things that you can see, and the dissolved solids are the things in the water that you can't see. We really don't have too much to worry about in terms of the things on the bottom. So I'm going to focus on the first two things on the list and talk about phosphorus and talk about suspended solids today. Excuse me, of course. This is a rather complicated table, but the colors tell the story. Red is where we are exceeding the goals that we have to minimize contributions from the watershed to Lake Ripley, and white is where the values were either at or below goal. So phosphorus across the board for many years has been higher than our goal of 0.075 milligrams per liter. I can get into what some of the trends might look like, kind of talking about why those numbers go up and down when I get to the modeling section. But right now, we don't really see any directional trends as much as we see things just kind of going up and down from year to year. And that is true for both the suspended solids and for the phosphorus that we find. I'll talk about what drives those changes in the following slides. Any questions about this one so far? So we collect these samples. You might have seen myself or Andrew, someone else who helps out with that, or Leanna. Essentially, we're filling bottles to collect this information. We send the samples to the State Lab of Hygiene, and within a few weeks, they send us back our results. And we did continue this program in 2025, but I just pulled some of our equipment out today, and that data usually gets worked on in the spring through summer so that it's ready for this meeting. So we'll know what happened in 2025 in 2026. So flow monitoring is a combination of those metal tubes with a yellow cap. Some of them don't have yellow caps. And essentially, inside of that tube, there is a water depth sensor that logs a data point every 15 minutes. And they're barometric pressure sensors. And so what they look at is, in the yellow part, there's a barometric pressure sensor that tells you what the pressure is in the air. And then there's a slightly increase in the pressure with the probes being submerged inside of the tube. Doing some fancy engineering math that's a little bit beyond my understanding of how it works. You can back a depth out of it based on the difference in the two pressures. So we take those values every 15 minutes over the course of the day, anywhere from 8 to a dozen times a year, sometimes more. Go out with a wading rod that's got a little propeller on the end of it that's calibrated to an electronic device, and it can calculate the velocity of the water that passes by, so feet per second. When we combine 10 or so of those measurements, it allows us to know what the cross-sectional area of the creek is at a given point. We know how much water is flowing through it. So then we can get to cubic feet per second, which is the standard measure of flow that we use in the United States and in Wisconsin. So we have a lot of data. You're talking about, when we deploy these in March or whenever spring break is, and take them out this weekend, we're talking about a total data set that has around 50,000 data points. So we're very data rich in terms of the information that we have related to flow. I'm going to save the results because they really pertain more to the water quality or the watershed modeling is where we use that data, and I'll explain the process where we get from a depth to a flow to a cubic feet per second, and then what we do with that information and how we try to understand what's happening in the watershed. So the first thing we do is we have to develop what's called a rating curve. So you can see from the number of dots that are on there, and this is just from an old presentation, we have way more dots, but the equations don't really change much because the creek hasn't changed that much. But on the y-axis, the one that's vertical, you can see there's flow in cubic feet per second. That's what I measured. And then what I do is I download the data off the sensors, and it tells me what the sensor depth was at each of those data points that I collected. So it's usually within 15, well, it should be within 7.5 minutes of when the data point was collected, when I collected the data, if it's in 15-minute intervals. So I just round down or up based on the time as to which flow matches which data point. Generally, things don't change that fast. So it really doesn't matter if you're dead on, like that 0 or 15 or 30 or whenever the point is collected. And then basically I use a spreadsheet program to find the line of best fit. And that equation up there for 23.8 minus 26.1x, blah, 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 that is the equation that relates sensor depth to flow. So even though I only have 10 or 12 flow measurements, I can use all 30,000 or 40,000 of those flow measurements, or those depth measurements, to mathematically calculate flow for the remaining time that we weren't out there. And in this case, we have R squared tells you how closely the data points match the line, and anything over, in what we do, anything over 0.8 is really, really good. And we are lucky in that at our sites, we have very, very high numbers. Park Road's a little bit different, but that site is difficult to use in modeling in terms of nutrient and sediments. But we do know how much water is leaving the lake, so there's still value in maintaining that. But there's some weird things that happen with the lake level rising and the way the channel's shaped that the relationship's not quite as good, but it still works. So when we take our modeled flow, the next thing we can do is we can track that flow over time. And in 2022, what we found in terms of cubic feet per second is that the modeled flow maxed out at about 20 CFS. Just to kind of calibrate that, like mentally, like what does that mean? That would be after a pretty significant rainfall, like maybe an inch or two, probably an isolated event. So if you've been past, Ripley Road or any other places where the creek crosses the road, you would notice that the stream probably changed color during that event. And you would notice that it was getting pretty close to the banks, but probably not fully overtopping in most places. So again, predicted flow, that's where I did the math. The dates are along the bottom. And this is 2022. Now, I did scale these axes, so when you look at the next series of graphs, some of these peaks might not be very evident at all sites. In 2022, that was kind of just a normal year. We had like a regular, during the monitoring season, I don't know what happened before June or after October, but while we had the probes out there, this is pretty much what you'd expect for a typical year. You can see there were two pretty decent sized storm events and one medium sized one. So, and the little blips along the way would just be smaller periods of rain. And that's what we're looking for are the peaks. So how much rainfall fell on the land that causes those peaks to rise. Now, one thing that I can tell you just from looking at the shapes of these graphs is that, and you can probably see this, what happens when it rains? Like, is there a big delay? Do we have a lot of watershed storage that is slowing the water down, or is it moving through the system quickly? Quickly, because that rise when we have a rainfall event is very, very immediate. And this resembles more what you'd expect in a suburban type watershed as opposed to a largely agricultural one. So as normally the agricultural, if you don't, in watersheds, if you have some storage that's happening, you would expect that to raise much more slowly. This is what it looks like, just for my frame of reference. I look at the USGS monitoring station in Waukesha Prairie Avenue, and it basically looks just like this, except the volume's much smaller. We had a huge flood in Waukesha, so, but the same pattern exists in our data. 2023, we didn't have Highway A, unfortunately. There was a problem with the probe that we did get fixed, but we missed the meat of the modeling season. But when I say that this is like a dry year or the low end of low, we don't have any predicted flows that exceed 10 CFS, which is half of the previous events in the previous year. So this year probably, and I don't remember back to 2023 at this point because I have so many data points in my head that I can't remember them all. But I would guess the lake was probably fairly clear this year and water level probably was an issue. But as you can see, the amount of water coming into the lake was fairly low. And then we get to 2024. I remember last year, I think it was Meg who asked me the question, well, what's going to happen in the spring? Or what happened with the spring rainfall events? And I said, well, I don't know. I know the probes were out there, but we don't have the season. The season's not complete yet, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. And 2024 was not a good rain year for the lake. We had tons of high flow events, maxing out at 35 CSS, triple the year before, double the year before that. And just, if you look at all these points here, the rain in the spring just kept coming, and then we dropped into, essentially a very dry period over the course of the summer. One of the things when you're thinking about lake management and what happens in the lake when we have things going on in the watershed is the timing of events. So when you have these large spring events where you've got all of this stuff from the winter and all this stuff from the spring collecting, just flushing into the lake. Some really odd things happened in our data in the year 2024, and I think it was in part because the setup. So you think about it, if you are managing your lawn and you want to have healthy green grass, then in the early spring, you're going to use fertilizer, and you know your grass is going to be green and the grass is going to grow quickly. Essentially, we did that form of lawn management unintentionally with the lake in 2024, where we had these huge water inputs that brought just tons of stuff with it. So this event in the fall probably would have minimal impact on what's going on in the lake. But when you have these big events in the spring, it kind of sets the stage for things to come. And it presents challenges for not only water level management, the lake was probably very high in the spring, but also you're adding all that fertilizer, and then right after that you heat the lake up. So it's kind of tells a story. And I didn't have time to look at what the SECI depths were to kind of look at how that affected water clarity, but that would be something that I'd be interested in seeing how this kind of lines up with how this is functioning in the lake.
It'd be interesting to see how our weed collection related to this model versus,
Right.
this, see if we collected more weeds last year than we did in previous years. I know we have the data.
Yeah, I don't know how much was collected. So I don't know, in this case, I don't know if we would push the lake towards more like an algae-dominated system for that year, and we would actually see maybe less plants growing in those years.
Okay.
I would think probably 2023, with the water levels being low, that would be a more plant-heavy year, because the lake would have been clear. You had a lot of plants growing in the lake. I mean, I remember walking around in 2023. I never used waders the entire year to go to any of the sites. I just wore knee boots, and I could get in and out of all the sites. Not so in 2024. I think we almost lost the bridge in 2024 in that spring. That's over in the preserve. So just kind of lining them up so you can visually, these are close to the same size. Sorry, my graphic skills are a little lacking when I was looking at this, but you can really see the point of the difference in the peaks and the frequency of the peaks, and give you kind of an ability to infer what might be going on. So medium water, not much water, and more water than we've seen in a long time. That's how that one shook out. So now that we know what the flows are, there's that equation that I pointed out. Allows us to scale things up. So we know that with all these measurements in a day, essentially this stuff happens, and we want to know, like, at 2.5 cubic feet per second is 71 liters. So we're looking at how much water is moving through the system, and after you scale that up and you start calculating volumes, in an average day, there's about 1.5 million gallons of water entering the lake. So that's just like,
1.5 million gallons?
that's just,
Wow.
well, and that's just on those baseline. I don't remember what my CFS, 2.5 cubic feet per second. So way down here in our baseline levels, on a daily basis, it's about 1.6 million gallons of water entering the lake in the average day. Now, it's way higher than that, obviously during storm events. But if you want to get like a visual representation in your head of what this would look like if we were to just like empty something into the lake instead of have it flow slowly through the creek, it's not one Olympic swimming pool, it's 3
Per day.
per day. So, I mean, even though it's a small creek, the water's always moving. It's a lot of water coming in and through that little creek into our lake. So the pattern remains the same when we start converting flows to volumes, but this is again all scaled. So we have 30,000 gallons on a big event, and then typically we can see down here the volumes are much lower. So this is driven by rainfall events. So in some ways we are at the mercy of Mother Nature and what happens in the state the watershed's in today. We see large volumes or large variations in water volume entering Lake Ripley. And the thing that makes that important is that the volume of water and what's in the water eventually drives lake processes through the inputs of phosphorus and sediment into Lake Ripley. So how do you go from flow and volume to loadings? Basically do the same thing. So measured flow in the field, And then this axis represents bottles that were filled. Those were sent to the lab, and this represents data from 2022 to 2024 to create this curve. And again, this is not quite as straightforward and as good of a match for phosphorus, which I can talk about that in a sec. But we have a wonderful relationship between suspended solids and flow. So the suspended solids modeling, I have a pretty high level of confidence in that one. A little bit less in the phosphorus. But phosphorus is a weird thing because this is something that accumulates on the surface of the watershed. So if I'm on that rising end of an event and I'm collecting samples, I'm probably going to see higher phosphorus because there's water forcing it into the creek. On the back end of that, if I'm sampling as the water levels are going down, that pulse has already gone through for phosphorus. And so that explains some of this variation you might see here. Some of these that cluster together are probably, I would guess these over here are more on the rising end. So there's, higher concentrations relative to the flow. And then these over here would probably be more on that falling end where maybe the values are a little bit less than expected. And when you're doing modeling, usually the best thing to do is to kind of just split the difference. So we don't have enough data to really model each of those scenarios, but we can acknowledge that those scenarios probably are there. And since every time it rains, the curve goes up and down, they kind of cancel each other out. So at any given moment, it might not be exactly what's going in or out of the lake in terms of phosphorus, but on the average, over a longer period of time, it's probably much closer to the real value. So thinking about things in terms of like an entire event versus one point in an event, it's probably the best way to think about some of the modeling that we're doing. Suspended solids, I'll just say, I don't think that relationship happens because a lot of our solids, in my opinion, outside of the initial flush in a big event, probably are coming from within the creek itself. So that's more consistent. It doesn't matter if the flow curves are going up or down. It's still that friction of the water against the banks and against the creek bottom are going to pull a relatively same amount of sediment up. So no dilution effect, essentially. So looking at the predicted loading, so in the y-axis note that is in pounds. So in 2022, in your normal year, we have one event, a couple little blips in the spring, and we see that there's a loading event that occurs right here outside of the baseline. Looking at 2023, that's just my dot, that's not a real dot. Essentially, in the grand scheme of things, we had essentially nothing going into the lake. Well, there was stuff going in, but at a very low level compared to this monster right here. So this is a real spike. Do I know if 3,000 pounds of phosphorus or 3,000 pounds of suspended solids were going in that moment? Probably a slight overestimation because where we can sample cuts off down here. So we're just extrapolating and estimating to the best of our ability. But these big rainfall events cause big things to happen. And here we see we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events that probably exceed the previous 2 years combined just in 2024. So lots of sediment are moving through the system that year. And then there's just a visual comparison. So we have that one bump in 22, and then we have lots of things going on in 2024. So this is sediment driven. Some of it comes from the watershed, I'm sure, but a lot of it comes from actually within the creek itself and just the scouring that happens. If you've walked through our watershed and the higher portions of the watershed in the creek, there's sediment everywhere. Dry years, not much of an issue. Wet years, those would be things that would be potentially damaging to the water quality of the lake in the short and the long term. Phosphorus, we essentially see the same pattern. One little blip in 22, 23 is pretty much baseline the entire year. And then in 2024, we have these huge events happening right at like 2 weeks before the lake's gonna start really warming up. So not a great scenario in '24. This is what the modeling spreadsheet looks like, just so you can, I know Steve, you love this stuff if you're doing the accounting. It's kind of like, you know, phosphorus accounting, same thing. But this is just a spreadsheet that I created that has all the parameters that we're modeling, and then it can tell you, this is the interesting part for me, is looking at, you know, there's a half pound or 0.6 pounds of sediment going in, and here we have a tiny little 0.008 pounds going in this particular 15-minute stretch in 2022. And it just, you know, we do that for every 15 minutes, and then what you're going to see in the following analysis is when this is all summed up and then compared from year to year. So we have this for every year at every site, except for, unfortunately, for the Highway A site that we lost in
So it's
23.
actually down to that detail, where we
Yes.
can tell how many pounds at that site
We can estimate how many are coming in, and
per 15 minutes?
for every 15 minutes, we know how much is coming in every 15 minutes, or we can model it. Now, as I said, there's play in the model, like there is in any model. So for that 15-minute period, I don't know what the error would be in that value versus reality, but what I can tell you is that over larger periods of time, and I don't mean a long time, like a few hours, those values are probably quite accurate.
Wow.
So do you take into account in your model rainfall? Do you plug that in as well?
Where I'm looking at the response of the creek to rainfall, we don't monitor rainfall specifically for this purpose, but we do have that data available. And if you know, we're collecting data like out by the Prairie Garden out here is typically where it's collected. You could use that to define events and add that information to the graph. Like you could label and say, prior to this, there was, I think the one in 2024, I was looking at that, I want to say over the span of like 4 or 5 days, there was 9 inches of rain,
Okay.
if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
wanting to know too is.
Yep.
So anecdotally, we know that, but it's not embedded in the model.
Okay.
There are models that will do that, but those models would not be accurate as accurate as this one, because we're taking real measurements in real time at the creek.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a little bit complicated, but had to kind of find a way to get my brain around what's happening and a way to show you what was happening. So when I first started out, I noticed at most of the time, or in the first year, that what was going on between Preserve Central and Highway A, there wasn't really a lot happening in that quote-unquote normal year. So what I really thought, like, what do we really care about? We want to know what's happening from the preserve down to Ripley Road. Because starting in the preserve and down to Ripley Road, we have a measure of control over what can happen in the watershed, because we have property that's got wetlands on it. So what I found in terms of water volume, and this doesn't really make a lot of sense, because normally you'd think as water travels upstream to downstream in a watershed, you would continuously collect more. However, that doesn't always happen. When you have wetlands in the watershed, when you have events occurring that cause the water to rise, overtop the banks and get up on the land, those wetlands will sequester water, sediment, and nutrients, hold them there, and then release them more slowly, which is really what we're looking to do in more places in the watershed. We'll talk about that later. So we see a 10% decrease in volume of water between the preserve and Ripley Road in a regular year, and we see a 15% decrease in a wet year. So what that tells me is that between Preserve Central and Ripley Road, there's some wetlands that are doing some work. Like the water's got to go somewhere. And we've seen the flow models for this are talking about, like, you know, 0.98 R squared value, which doesn't mean a lot to you guys. It just means it's really accurate in terms of flow. So, and we're also seeing too, you can compare, like looking at how the water volume, how much lower it is in 2023. I mean, it's about half of what it was in 2022, and then 3 times as much in 2024. So you talk about huge differences in the amount of water that are entering the lake. Here's another example of wetlands doing work. Suspended solids were down almost 41%, between Preserve Central and Ripley Road. And these numbers here represent tons of sediment entering the lake between June and October. So, tons. Here we see the values were pretty much the same, and which would tell me that in a dry year, most of what's coming into the watershed is coming in upstream of the preserve. So there's stuff happening up there, but when you start adding rain into the mix and precipitation events, we don't have such a great story. During these really, really big events, the existing wetlands are still doing what they're doing during the smaller events, but they're just not doing enough. So in this case, we're seeing an 11%, 11% increase. That must be a typo. That doesn't look right. Oh, from A to Ripley Road. Okay, so from this one, there's an 11% increase, but you can also see from Preserve Central to Highway A, there's a huge increase. So we have some watershed dynamics that in normal and dry years are doing one thing, and during big events are doing completely another. And then you can see also the relatively high amount of phosphorus that was modeled coming into the lake, and most of that is due to those big events. And we don't see a decrease, or a decrease as we did in the prior year. We actually see an increase. So I don't have scientific proof documenting this, but in my opinion, you're talking about a massive scouring event where you just have sediment being picked up from the watershed and just being transported down the creek. That doesn't happen as much in these other years. The crying emojis are because I really wish I had that data, but the probe was broken, so fortunately that happens. So what does this mean for us? Lake Ripley's watershed needs some help in wet years. What that means is we need more storage in the landscape, either in the form of retention ponds or wetlands or something to slow that water down. So wet years are a big problem, and suggest that some management strategies are working in normal and dry years, but we have a scaling issue when it comes to lots and lots of rain. I showed this video from a couple years ago. I was out walking around by the site off of the parking lot for the preserve. It's across the street to the west. And if you've ever walked through there, it doesn't normally look like this. So this is after, I believe it was a 4 or 5 inch rain event the next day. So that's what we want those wetlands to look like after an event, because it means the water's getting in and it's slowly settling out. And you can imagine that as the water is sitting in these wetlands, you've got sediments that are settling out, being incorporated into the local soils, and you've also got that water hopefully going down those deep-rooted prairie plants that are dragging some of that dissolved phosphorus with it. Now the particulate phosphorus, that won't necessarily work. It'll bind to the sediments and still stay in the wetlands, but we can really limit what's going into the lake if we slow the water down. So this is my opinion. This is not anything that I've talked to Lana about, or I've talked to anyone else on staff about. This is just me evaluating the data and objectively looking at what I think should happen. So take it for what it is in my professional opinion. I really like Stantec's management alternatives. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to look at the report. Essentially what they're talking about is slowing down water and giving places for it to go during these large events. We want to utilize wetland areas where we have ownership and control of what's going on to try to encourage these things to happen. I think there's a huge opportunity in the preserve to provide some more storage, because if you, actually Andrew, who is the prairie technician, did some experiments where he cut some vegetation along the stream banks, and you could see evidence of sediment flowing up 40, 50, 60 feet away from the stream if you just looked where the sediment was collected on the vegetation that was in the wetland area. I think there's a lot of progress there. Could be made there. One of the things that you will need to evaluate whether or not this stuff is working is to continue monitoring. And I would assume that that would be something that would be interested knowing, like, hey, we're gonna do a project, did the project work? The one downside for that is that a lot of the work that we've done to get to this point, if we start changing the shape of the stream and how the water moves through the stream, then that depth to water depth to flow relationship may change, and that would require post-management, like some more intensive flow monitoring to recreate those curves that we do annually to understand how water is moving. This could transition to in-lake management actions down the road if we start seeing that these inputs and these flows are being reduced. For example, I've heard a lot of interest in dredging where in the inlets. You can barely get a kayak through there right now if you weigh, well, I won't admit, but if you weigh as much as I do, it's difficult to get a kayak through there because you're bottoming out on the sediment and then the plants that are growing there. There's no point in pulling the sediment out of that channel until the inputs from the watershed are under control, or you're just wasting money, in my opinion. Now you could do it every single year, and yes, it would work, and if you had the permits and everything, but that would be a continual activity that you would have to do, like maintenance activity, not management. Now, if you were able to reduce the sediment inputs from the watershed, then that Band-Aid fix becomes a long-term management strategy to keep that portion of the creek flowing and open. So, in conclusion, I think we've learned a lot, and we've gotten really lucky in the 3 years that we've been modeling so far, in that we had a normal year, a dry year, and a wet year in succession. I mean, sometimes you have to wait a decade for that to happen. It just so happened the first 3 years that we did this project, we kind of got lucky. But we have information in what's happening in all those scenarios, which allows us to narrow our focus to start thinking about those really big rainfall events and what we're going to do about those 50 or 100-year events that are happening much more frequently than that currently. In closing, I would open it up for any questions that you might have about any of the data or about any of my thoughts that I presented for you today.
Yeah. It's amazing. The data just shows the results like this. It's so cool to see. Have you been able to share any of this with Santec, who's helping us with our proposals?
The data exists in the spreadsheets, which usually I think I'm a very organized spreadsheet person, but when you're doing like a data deep dive, like tabs pop up and things happen, and they have the information, but I don't know that they've been able to process like what I've just showed you.
Okay.
So I would, consider just sharing a presentation with them to start and seeing what they think. But a lot of what they talked about in that report was in-stream stabilization of sediments and bank stabilization, and looking at like drain tile inputs and things like that, which, I mean, we've been talking about that for years, about those things being important. But the one nice thing about the terrible, 10 inches of rain in 2024 is it really showed us how much water goes in. And while I can't reliably tell you like how much sediment and how much phosphorus outside of like way more than normal, I mean, it's quantified in the model, but what I am confident in saying is that the volume of water is accurate. So whatever's in that water, there's tons of it going into the lake in those big events. And we've been developing our own opinions about it that seem to be mirrored by Stantec's opinions on what's going on. So I think that there is a really valid justification to move forward with some watershed management.
Yeah. I think I remember it from their report that roughly 70% of the solids and phosphorus get into the lake during those high rain events. And if that's the case, all your modeling makes exact sense. And how you try to slow that down during those heavy rot events. Those major events that are happening more than 25 years.
I mean, the one
every
thing
3 years they happen now, or 2.
The one thing I would say, I would caution you about in terms of doing watershed management, looking at wetlands versus more like stormwater retention style type of management, which is also in their report, which I think has its place, but you have to acknowledge that those things have a lifespan and have maintenance and upkeep. Whereas if you were to go more the wetland route, there might be some maintenance that you do, but it wouldn't include dredging. So it just,
Yeah.
my personal preference again is I like using the idea of using wetlands in restoration as opposed to digging holes.
Dwight, we have a question.
Thank you. My name's Todd too. You're Dwight?
Yeah.
And we suffer through the prop chop weeds.
Oh,
that,
sure.
come up on the shore. And I've, through the years here that you're talking about, last year, 2024, we had much fewer problems, I'm speaking anecdotally here,
Yeah.
measurements, than this year, 2025. And yet your data would suggest that the phosphates would have been much greater in 2024. I know you're not measuring weed growth, but is there some explanation why
Yeah.
weeds exploded in 2025?
In 2025, I haven't looked at anything from 2025 to date, but I would think in 2024 the lake levels would have been up. The plants would have had to grow a lot farther to reach the surface. And because the lake should have been more green from all of the phosphorus coming in the lake, like a lot of that tends to suppress the plants. So it's a little counterintuitive because when you'd expect to have more plants are when the water's clear and the lake level's low. So rain is going to push the lake more towards an algae-dominated ecosystem, whereas dry weather is going to push it more towards that clear water state where you have more abundant plants. And then you might have people who are trying to go to the same areas that they go to every other year, and when the water, and if the water levels are down, then you're going to have that chop on the
I don't
crop.
know what explains it, but it was dramatic this year. Parts of the lake became so inaccessible to prop boats that people were taking the boats out in August because they couldn't use them.
Right. Water levels were lower, right?
I haven't looked at that yet this year.
It appears that, but
Yes,
visually
I mean, it
looking-
sounds like the water levels were low this year, at least in the end of the
Yeah,
year.
because we haven't had any big rain events for quite a while.
I have,
I did notice that this year, the lake was really clear, which would let the sunlight go through much deeper than if it was, I mean, other than in the middle of the summer when everybody is out. In the early summer and after summer, the water was really, really clear, which would, I think,
I'm
stimulate.
not complaining about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, one seems to come with the other, right?
Mhm.
You get clear water and you get more weeds.
Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, perhaps this is out of the scope of the project, but do you look at just lake elevations? Some lakes tend to flood a lot more than Lake Ripley because they either don't have an outlet or they have a smaller outlet. How does rainfall affect just the lake levels?
Well,
I mean, obviously it
yeah, if the
increases,
water levels
but
are low, it pushes it up to a point. Excuse me, and then there's some rocks that are holding the water back as it enters the creek, over on the far end of the lake. And at that point, the lake will continue to rise more slowly as water exits the lake via the outlet of Park Road.
right.
And that's when I'm sampling, it's funny because if it's been raining, but it's been dry before that, I'll go to the sites in the watershed on the inlet side, and water's everywhere. It's like there's the creek's up, I need my waders and everything's going on. I might go to the outlet to do the same monitoring, and I'm back in my knee boots again because the water hasn't passed through the lake. It's got a residence time as it moves through the lake. That water level is going to go up, and then it will start coming out of the lake. I don't know what the lag is, but there's definitely like some type
There's
of
a
a lag
lag.
time to it. But then I'll go, a week later, I'll go out and see what's happening, and things will have settled down on the inlet side, but then water's rushing out the outlet. So
Right.
that's the reason that doing nutrient and sediment modeling on what's going out of the lake is really hard,
Okay.
because there's no relationship between any type of, like, there's such a lag time that happens between things that happen in the watershed and things that happen at the outlet, because the lake's in the middle, that modeling that is
Okay.
I haven't even figured out how to do it yet.
Okay, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
was wondering if that was something you were going to look into in the future, but it sounds like maybe that's not even necessary when we're with our goals.
We do actually track, during the entire season, we do track the lake level using one of those sensors. So that we have by the FEMA property on the other side of the lake. That's where that is. We haven't had that shot in yet, so we don't know like how that elevation of that monitor relates to the ordinary high water mark. But we can tell when the lake is up or down when we
Right.
look back at data.
Right.
So.
Any other questions for Dwight? Great job. I mean, this just amazes me how much
Yeah, thank you very
data
much.
means to us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your
Yeah.
work.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity to do the work. Appreciate it.
Very good presentation.
Great job, Dwight.
Sorry it was a little long, but we need,
Really
get a teacher,
interesting, though.
get a teacher on their science job in front of the mic. You're stuck with it for a while.
Okay.
If I have to go. If there's any other questions that you have, you can send them to me via email or give them to any of the Jimmy or Leanna, and I will do my best to respond. Because I know it's a lot to absorb, and if you think of something on your way home, I don't want that question to go unanswered. It might take a week or two for me to get back to you, but if there's anything that you're wondering about, please feel free to send me a message.
Do we
Thanks,
have a
Dwight.
copy of that, of your slides?
I shared
I
it
can-
with you last night, so that can be, you can distribute that however,
Great.
obviously.
I will send it to you on Monday.
Yeah.
I'll send it to the board, so everybody has it.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it too.
Yeah,
I
it's
got
really great.
Yeah, it was very good.
Will you just slide the projector closed?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Do you want me to turn it off?
Please.
Okay, we'll move on to end of year report, Clean Boats, Clean Waters.
Awesome. Tony could not be here. He is heading back down to Florida for the winter. Jealous. But he did give you guys a report that I'm sure you all read through. He did a great job at the boat launch this year. He met his 200 hours. He contacted a lot of folks. A lot of people are remembering who he is year by year, which is always nice. He educates everybody down there on aquatic invasive species and how to prevent moving them from lake to lake. And in the meat of his summary, you can see that statistics. If you want to read his statistics, they are there. And this will be online for anybody who's curious to read his Clean Boats, Clean Waters report.
Yeah.
It's clear he enjoys it.
He
Yeah.
does enjoy it, yes.
It's neat how we track the amount of boaters and the usage of the ramp too, so that's valuable for us, I think, Laura, too, at the town side.
Yeah.
Just on how much activity it gets over there per year. And we have these for quite a few years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions on Tony's report? Otherwise, I'll dive into mine.
We can talk about this too at the town level as we
Of course.
work on budget and so forth, and the boat launch will give us a good idea of.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to jump right into mine. It was a busy month. Most of my time has been spent on the 5 DNR surface water grants that we plan on applying for. Lots of meetings to discuss those with the DNR and with the county. There was a county-wide purple loosestrife AIS grant that I was hoping the county could apply for, but we need to flush that out a little more. A county-wide survey of purple loosestrife needs to be done before we can apply for a grant to control it. So Colton and I and Patricia at the county are discussing how to get that project up and running. Our cost share program, our Sleepy Hollow cost share, is still working on getting their DNR permit. Aaron Cox at the DNR and I both reached out to him this week, and I was able to get Jay on the phone, and we're going to touch base Monday to try to get that permit completed so he can get his project done. He officially has 1 month to get that project done. We did grant him a 6-month extension. If he needs another extension, Jimmy and I will discuss and see if that's appropriate within the cost share program. We did hold the public informational meeting with Stantec to discuss the inlet stream restoration project. So 2 of their engineers came here. Thank you all for attending. If you were able to make it, I appreciate you being in attendance. And some really good questions were asked by our audience members and by our board members. And Arthur Watkinson of the DNR was able to attend, and he kind of walked us through some of the things we would need to do, permit requirements, structural, wetland ideas that we would need to complete before we embarked on one of these projects that Stantec recommended. So I am working with Stantec at the moment to get our phase 2 for 2026 developed. I have a meeting with Sarah on Monday to go through that. So we're kind of juggling that. We have 2 grants writing with them and our 2026 proposal. So a lot's going on with Stantec and the Inlet Stream Restoration Project. For our other grant, AEPP, that's our Aquatic Invasive Species Grant, a lot of analyzing data is going on in report writing. I did 4 surveys for that this year, so a lot of data to analyze. Big thanks to Dwight for helping with that. And Andrew, he inputted a lot of my PI data, so I can just hopefully analyze it and write the report. So saved a lot of time being able to do that. So thanks for all of their help. Thank you, Laura, for giving the update on Enbridge. That is generally the update that I had as well. I touched base with Caroline Rice asking about the soil vapor extraction pilot test, and Laura gave a pretty thorough update there. So unless anybody has any more questions about that, I'll leave it where it is. And by all means, feel free to email me. Todd, I did get your email. Sorry, I was not in the office when I got that, but what I believe that is soil vapor extraction and some of their trucks for that. But Laura and I will reach out to Enbridge next week and follow up and see what's going on out there. I do have a meeting set up with Mark Baldock to potentially get Lake Ripley on the spring questionnaire for the DNR to look at our panfish population and make sure that our fishery is going to be healthy in the next 10 years, because some of them have been smaller than we expected in the past. Land acquisition, Jimmy will give a better update, but we did acquire some more land. Yay us. That will be exciting, a lot of work, but definitely exciting and important properties for the district to have. A lot of stuff has been going on in the preserve. Our volunteers have gotten a lot done with willows and buckthorn. Andrew's gotten a ton done herbiciding all of those willows and buckthorns so they won't come back, which is great news. Ty is going to start cutting in our fire breaks needed for our prairie burns next year. We'll be discussing those 5-year contract bids shortly. I got all of those back, so that's good. Under water quality monitoring, our perchlorate results came back, so that's to deal with fireworks and how fireworks could potentially affect our lake. Only 1 sample was slightly above the 4 parts per billion detection limit 1 day after fireworks, and then a week later they had all gone back to 0. So I reached out to JC, who originally started this project with the University of New York until their federal funding got taken away. And she said, it doesn't look like a concern. That's what we expect when people do fireworks so close to the lake, is an immediate spike in those results, and then for it to dissipate, dilute, and go back to normal. So we're gonna be continuing that water quality monitoring for the next 5 years for sure, but we'll discuss that as a board just to see if there's any changes as those fireworks continue. So
what's the result of the spike? I mean, what does it do?
Yeah, there's research going on about what these chemicals and specifically perchlorates can do. There has been some evidence that it can negatively affect fish, their biology, but there isn't a ton of research at the moment. So still kind of new information being.
So there's no level that's available for us to say it's to this point and it's a problem?
Right.
There's no way that, there's nobody that's.
Well, the EPA has set this 4 parts per billion,
Okay.
but there's not a lot of research on what that chemical does to the biology of the organisms living in our lake.
From what I looked at, it seemed like any research that was done was with very high levels that would be maintained for a while, but since ours go right back down shortly after, I would expect that you wouldn't see the same changes with the species in this case. And we're just taking that at one location, right?
Right.
So, you know, what's happening at the other side of the lake is probably very different. But we did, for everybody, for our fireworks ordinance, we did limit the number of events that can happen per year to 3. It was 3, right, Jimmy?
I think
it was
3,
3.
yeah.
3.
Just to protect the lake.
Yep.
And we only have one permit issued the last several years. We just kept it down, just as we're going this 5-year period, just to see how it impacts the lake. We can always readjust the ordinance when we get more information.
Right, and that did not include the racetrack, so it was
No.
just basically around the lake, we amended our ordinance to 3, and it's a first come, first served. And we did that in anticipation of if there were results that were coming back, that we could limit that, so.
So the speedway is out of the watershed. So anything that's out of the watershed, we did not limit that, but that too is primarily from the speedway. We haven't received any permits from
Right.
other locations.
Well, good, we'll keep monitoring that.
Yes, thank you. Under weed harvesting, we, as you can see, pulled our weed harvester and the conveyor out of the lake. Our harvesters have been doing a ton of work winterizing it since the engine reached, I think it was 1,500 hours, but it's been 500 hours since 2020, which calls for hydraulic oil to be changed, which is a pretty big job. So they were able to get that done this week, and now Richard is going to come next week and clean the harvester and the conveyor, and the following week they should be put in storage. So all good news there.
There's the loads of weeds this year?
Yeah, we
54.
harvested 54.5 loads of aquatic plants this year, so pretty similar to last year.
Which is what I asked Dwight, is if there was any correlation between the years of plant collection on our end, right? And it's about the same as last year, it looks like.
And that's it. Any questions for me?
Okay, any other questions for Lana? All right, great job, busy
Thank
month. We'll keep moving forward. All right, let's move on to new business. We've already talked to our attorney, so that's done. Grant resolutions and discussion and possible action. We will start with the grant, the Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant.
That's the first resolution. So these resolutions are just so that I can apply for these grants, that my board has approved me to apply for 5 different surface water grants through the DNR. So that's all you're doing here, is giving me permission to apply for monies from the state. So the first one is Clean Boats, Clean Waters. You guys all know what that is. It's to protect our lake from any new aquatic invasive species. And I will need each of these approved in a separate motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the Clean Boats, Clean Water grant.
Awesome.
Second.
What number was it? Where's the number?
Number 1.
Number one? Okay, so it's 2026-1.
Yep, and in the first paragraph, it'll state.
There it is,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, just so you guys know.
I
And
don't
I'll have you sign
anything-
these at the end.
Okay, George has made a motion to approve 2621 resolution. Is there a second?
I second.
Laura, second. Okay, is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that one's approved. Georgia, you want to keep going, or do you want me
Sure.
to? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the surface water. Well, see, I only have words. I don't have numbers.
On the resolution, there's numbers. At the top, resolution 2026-1-2-3.
So was that the CCBC one?
Clean Boats, Clean Waters was the first one, correct?
Okay.
So the second one is actually E. Sorry, I didn't put these in order, but that's okay, kind of arbitrary. So the 2026-2 is E on your agenda, Surface Water Management Plan Implementation Grant. This is to reintroduce banded killifish into our lake. The district already put $3,000 in our budget to pursue this, but I would like additional monies from the DNR to help offset some of our costs. So that's what this one is.
So I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve
2026-2.
2026-2.
Perfect.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Steve
Fantastic.
second. Any other discussion on the motion?
Would it, really quick, is
Yeah.
the banded killifish, that's a small fish, right?
It is. It's a nearshore non-game fish species that would be very hard to see unless you're trying to capture it, but it's a native fish to Wisconsin that has been extirpated from Lake Ripley. And we believe that with our in-lake management protection that we've done over the last 20 years, we could reintroduce this fish through the protection of critical habitat designations and things like that.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, 2026-3 is B on your agenda, Surface Water Restoration Grant. So this is the grant that's associated with the bids that we will be looking at in a moment. I do have a private funding source that is willing to fund this project that we're discussing, but why not also get monies from the DNR because it aligns with their grant program. So this is for restoring a degraded wetland through vegetation stream bank management in our preserve on lands that we own.
I move to accept the surface water grant.
Okay, there's a motion to accept the surface water grant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh.
Steve seconded. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, great. 2026-4 is D on your agenda. It is a large-scale AIS population management grant. However, after my meeting with Arthur, I do need to remove common carp from the resolution language. It is not a restricted species in Wisconsin anymore. It is a prohibited species, so it will not work for this grant, unfortunately. But this grant is going to be geared towards late season harvesting Eurasian water milfoil. We have found that as we late season harvest this plant, it suppresses it because it collects the seeds that it's about to drop into the lake, and we've found that we're noticing a steady decrease. So we're hoping to get monies to fund our weed harvesting program as well as research into late season harvesting Eurasian water milfoil, and additionally curly leaf pondweed is in that mix too, but a heavier focus on EWM.
Are you going to apply for a different grant for the carp?
Unfortunately, there is no, since they changed it from a prohibited species, no, there isn't a grant that would help fund the carp. And we can actually discuss that next week too. I do have some updates on the carp barrier that we can discuss.
Okay.
All right, is there a motion to accept this resolution?
I'll make a motion to accept resolution 2026-4 with the exception of common carp.
Okay, is there a second?
I can second.
George is seconded. Okay, any other discussion on the resolution? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the final one is C on your agenda, Surface Water Planning Grant. This is for the grant that Stantec and I will apply for our 2026 phase with them, so we can help offset some of those costs.
Okay,
Okay.
is there a motion to?
I move
Make a
to
motion.
approve resolution 2026-5 for the Lake Ripley's Inlet Creek.
Okay, I heard Laura first, then we'll go to Georgia for the second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the grant and the resolution? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I think that should do it.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to prescribed burn bid for a 5-year contract, discussion and possible action. And Leanna has some.
Alrighty,
Quotes for
so
us,
I originally have been getting bids each year for our prairie burns, which is a lot of work. And I thought, why not have a 5-year contract with somebody instead so we can save money in the long run and time. So you have the 3 bids in front of you. One is from Tallgrass Restorations, one is from Midwest Prairies, and the third is from Pheasants Forever. Midwest Prairies added fire breaks into theirs, although they were told that we would be taking care of fire breaks. So if you subtract the fire breaks from their bid, that bid does come down a little bit.
That's the 2,400?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit,
Mid-
yes. It's $11,120 worth of fire breaks in this bid. So,
You gotta add them both together, huh?
yeah, the total bid for that one was $36,740. If you want to write that
Yeah,
down, I have
but
it
if
right
you,
here for
but
you.
if you take out the fire breaks, it's only 25.
Yes, and additionally, I did have all of these contractors put wetland burn prices in here. However, wetland burns aren't super recommended from these contractors anymore. So we likely will not be burning the wetlands. It's pricey and it just doesn't move the needle on any management options. It doesn't help get rid of hybrid cattail. It doesn't necessarily make a dent in reed canary grass. And they all thought not a super great way to spend your money. So we will likely be removing the wetlands, but I wanted to put them in there just so you guys could see how much they would cost. Okay, so if we look at tall grass restorations, I'm just gonna break the numbers down for you guys so y'all can understand what we're looking at. The prairies alone for them would be $14,500. The wetlands would be $15,580. And the rain garden would be $505. Okay, so if we were just looking, so y'all just need to look at rain gardens and prairies. Okay, for Pheasants Forever, their wetlands came out at $12,600. Their prairies came to $12,250. And their rain garden came to $350. Again, you'll just want to look at the prairies and the rain garden for the total.
Okay, so give me the total for the tall grass with the two that we want burned.
$15,000.
$15,000? How much?
$15,005.
And five? Okay. And the total for Pheasants Forever was what?
$13,550.
How much?
No, excuse me, $12,550.
I have $12,600.
Yeah, 12, yeah.
For prairies and rain garden, that would be Pheasants Forever, $12,600 for
Oh,
the
okay.
two
Yeah.
we need.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Okay,
15,000 for tall grass and how
and
much
then
for the?
12,600 for Midwest prairies for the prairie and rain garden as well.
So that's the benchmark we're looking to compare to, are those two?
Correct.
Okay, so when we look at most responsible,
And what about the Midwest prairies?
Midwest was 12,600 for the prairies and the rain garden, same as Pheasants Forever.
so we got
And-
two that are the same.
And
Okay.
Georgia did mention something to me today that I thought was a good idea. Georgia, if you'd like to share.
Well, I would like to see, since this is a 5-year contract, I would like to see language in there that if they aren't doing what we want them to do to our happiness level, we ought to have a way out.
So whichever contract we approve, I will make sure that there's a clause that says if y'all aren't meeting expectations, we're allowed to cancel our contract. And I thought that was a good idea. So just
And
know
these-
that that language will be added in any contract that we sign.
And these would be the cost each year. There's no
It's a
language with it. Yeah,
Correct,
increase
it's
it by
fixed.
3%.
Yep, absolutely.
So
So really, we're looking at, go ahead, Doug.
I guess I just have to question, are we even allowed to approve a 5-year plan? We're essentially, saying this is going to be in our next 4 budgets without input from our constituents. I mean, it's,
Well, it is in our management plan to burn the prairies every year, so
Okay.
it would fall into our management plan. And so yes, I think it would be appropriate. In the long run, we're saving them money by having a 5-year burn contract because like Laura just mentioned.
and I
each
understand
year-
that, and I agree with it. I'm
Oh.
just posing the question. So,
But that's a good question, because we don't have approved budgets for those years.
Right.
but if there's a way out, I mean, put language in there if we don't get an approved budget.
Well, that's what we would do. So we're gonna make sure that our legal counsel approves these contracts with the language we need in there. as far as an escape, or if they're not meeting our expectations, and it has to be contingent of the approval of the annual budget.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that that language gets added to these contracts, once we approve the basic vendor, okay? And if that vendor doesn't agree with that, then we'll have to bring it back to the board.
Do we have familiarity with any of these vendors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do
Yes,
you have a
we do.
preference, Liana?
Because there's a tie, you mean?
Yes.
Who did we use last year?
Last year, we used Midwest Prairies. The year before, we used Tallgrass. And the year before that, we used Pheasants Forever.
Okay, so
I
you've
think
got
they're-
all three?
course.
I think they're all great. I think Pheasants Forever would be a really good pick. They're a non-for-profit, right? Group that does this, and their experience is really good, and they have a really great burn crew with a lot of years of doing this.
Local.
They are local, yep. And so's Midwest. They're not too far away. I think either of these would be a great option.
They're really comparable. And if you read their qualifications and the kind of equipment they have, it's still comparable. And then their price is comparable. So, it kind of tells you that you're on the right track.
Yeah. The only thing was Midwest did get theirs to me last night, whereas Pheasants Forever got theirs to me within a week of us having the meeting, if that.
Well, it only makes the difference if there's a deadline. Was there a deadline that you gave them?
There was not.
Okay, then it doesn't make a difference.
Aren't we required to look at the lowest bid as long as all of our parameters are met?
Lowest responsible
Yeah,
bid.
they're-
So we're essentially talking about Midwest or Pheasants.
Correct.
That would be correct, yeah.
I would make a resolution to go with the Pheasants Forever bid.
The motion?
With
motion?
the language of having approval on a yearly basis, and as well as some language that we can cancel the contract if we're unhappy with their.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve Pheasants Forever with additional language on approval of our legal counsel of the contract,
I will
essentially.
second that motion.
Okay, there's a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, okay. Any nays? All right, motion passes, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Vegetation's stream bank management, bids and discussion.
Okay, so this is the project that I mentioned briefly last meeting. There is a private foundation that is willing to give us a good chunk of money to help fund a project in 2025 that would be a part of our overall inlet stream restoration project. So I pulled a lowest hanging fruit, which is something on our own property, a piece of stream bank that we can get rid of invasive and nuisance trees on, replant with proper wetland plants, and help create a buffer there to slow down some of that sediment and nutrients that we see entering our creek. So you have 3 bids. One of them is from A1 Tree Service and Stump Removal. They are just they are a great tree service company, but they don't do herbiciding, they don't do vegetation seeding, those kinds of things. This is just to cut and haul away 300 to 400 box elders. The reason I had to get him as our 3rd bid was there wasn't another contractor that was willing or had time for this project this year. So that's why I asked Daryl to get me just come cut down all these trees, and so we could have 3 bids per state statute. The second is tall grass restoration. The only thing that isn't included in their bid is, and the prices are there, it's just not in the total, is which seed mix we would use. So keep in mind that their bid will rise about $3 to $4 grand, depending on which seed mix would be most appropriate for those soil conditions at the site. So this project includes, I'm sure you've read the bids, but it includes removing box elder and buckthorn trees from this 3.5-acre project site, herbiciding those trees, coming back in the spring, mowing the area to prep it for seed in the fall, herbiciding again maybe 1 or 2 more times any regrowth, and then in the fall broadcasting a specific native seed mix to get wetland species growing in that area. So you can see both of their costs, all three of their cost estimates here, comparable.
I didn't have a chance to look at that. What's the total in Tallgrass?
24,460 without the seed mix. So I'd say roughly closer to 29,000 with any of those seed mixes.
What budget line does this come out of? Is it preserve restoration?
This would be preserve restoration. However, I do have a private funder that will be funding this entire project.
Okay.
So the project will be funded by a grant? or-
Private foundation.
Private foundation, okay. So we have funding for the project, we just have to pick the
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
proper vendor.
Right on.
And this will be done next year?
Nope, this will be completed
No,
this
it's
year,
This year yet?
Really?
We'll do it in the fall, okay.
hopefully.
Yeah, like now.
Like now? Oh, okay. And the money's available now?
Yep,
Yes.
they are ready to provide us
Oh,
with
okay.
money. I just needed 3 bids and
Okay.
an approval on one of them.
So we got 24,460 plus the seed, you
Correct.
said. How much is the seed?
It depends on which seed mix we pick, and until we get down there and do soil probes and do a little more research, we don't know which one exactly, but
Okay.
it's any of those.
And the other one's 22.9,
950, correct?
950, plus the seed.
Yep,
Which one is that, Leanna?
that
The
one is
20
Stantex, the 22,950.
I don't see that in my packet.
It would look like, oh, it was on your table this morning, right?
No, I gave that one to you when you left yesterday. Remember I handed you one?
Oh, I did not bring that.
Here, you can have mine for now.
My apologies.
No, don't be sorry.
I had a lot of papers with me
So-
yesterday.
Question about the seed mix. Is the seed mix the same for both companies? Or is the seed mix, I'm confused on the seed mix, for the Stantec quote?
It's included in the Stantec quote already.
Okay, so the seed mix is already included in the 22,950?
Correct,
And it's not included in the 24,460?
correct.
Right.
Okay. I didn't know if everybody caught that. I just did. Thank you. Okay, so I guess it's pretty safe to say Stantec's the lowest responsible bid, right?
Yes.
I would
Okay,
agree.
Okay.
Mhm.
I would need a motion then.
I'll make a motion to hire
Approve?
Stantec?
We would
Approve
approve
the
their-
bid?
Yep.
Approve the bid for Stantec.
Yep,
For
okay,
the
there's a
work.
motion to approve, Georgia made a motion to approve the Stantec bid for $22,950.
Second.
There's a second, Laura?
Yes.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the bid? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, great job on that one.
Thank you.
Okay, those are all done. Okay, we'll go into old business, land purchase and update. We had an unbelievable month for the Lake District this month. Myself, several others here on the committee, and Leanna worked very, very hard with our legal counsel to secure the second property on Highway A, which is 11 acres right next to the bar there. We now were able to buy both parcels on both sides of the Inlet Creek going all the way out to the lake, which is amazing for all the reasons why we've heard today in Dwight's presentation and everything else the Lake District's all about. Probably the most valuable piece of property that we could have obtained. And believe me, for the folks who've been around here for a while, we've been trying to purchase properties around our watershed to help protect it, help protect our lake for years. And unfortunately, none of those turned out, but fortunately, this time frame, one of the most valuable pieces came for sale, and we, with direction from members of the community also approved us to purchase those properties. So that got finalized last week. Myself and Lana, and I don't know if anybody else walked it with me, don't think so, but we actually went out there a few times and looked around to see what some of the immediate needs would be. But we realized the budgets are real tight, and we obviously haven't budgeted anything for these new land purchases yet. So we're going to look at just doing the minimums of cleanup and things like that. We do have a storage garage on the facility, on the property, so it's on the far south end, so we'll be able to utilize storage and save a little money there for our pontoon and other things that we have. So a great month for the Lake District. So hopefully 20, 30, 40 years from now, people will be thanking us greatly for the work that we've just done And if we ever need to work that end of the creek, which I'm guessing the plan eventually will start to include that, we will have ability to work in that area all the way out to the lake. So we've acquired the 18 acres on the north side of the creek and now the 11 acres on the south side. So
Where's the 11 acres at again?
what's that?
On Highway A?
Right, well, so you can see it best from Highway A right next to Lake Ripley Inn, where those wooden fences are.
Yeah.
So there's the building lot. There's actually a building lot up on top by the road, similar to all the other building lots on the hill, but then it goes way down and all the way along the inlet stream and all the way out to the lake. So certainly our intention is not to build the lot, but yeah. So it's been busy working through that process. So I thank everybody for their support. I thank the residents of the Lake District for supporting us and giving us approval to purchase these properties. And we will continue to do the great work that we are and somehow figure out how we are going to fund the work that needs to be done, but that will be done in the future, and the property will be ours, which is the hardest part. So, any other questions there? Thank you, Georgia.
But that's great.
Yeah,
That's
hope so.
great news.
it's beautiful. It's unbelievable down there. So,
Great news, Jimmy. Good job.
thank you. A lot of us worked on it. So, okay. Any other questions about land purchase? All right. I think that's any announcements. Let's see here. Any announcements today? No further announcements? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Laura made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Steve seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting.